Christy, let's jump into some calls.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to start, if we may, with Charlie in Washington. Charlie, what do you got for us tonight?
Hi, guys.
Hey, Charlie. How are you doing?
One of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was, I think that the term TERF is very limiting, because actually us trans males actually get it from the other side as well. Because, like, for instance, I was recently looking at a post, and it literally said, this was written by a gay man, and he's like, how to be able to recognize a trans female, haha, literally wrote haha after that, and not be tricked into having sex with a female. So I think the word TERF really limits what we're talking about. I think it'd be better if we all said trans exclusionary people, because I think that actually is more indicative of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I actually agree.
I just kind of want to talk about.
Yeah, no, Katy, you've written about the term gender critical and maybe some better alternatives.
So yeah, I've actually drawn a Venn diagram. I wish I'd had it prepared to show you of like the overlap, because I think that like TERF, for people who don't know, means trans exclusionary radical feminist, and it's something that came from the 70s, where radical feminism, some people took some ideas of radical feminism and used it to say, you know, trans women aren't women and all of the things that implies. And lots of radical feminists didn't say that, so they separated the two groups of this term TERF. And obviously there's traditional transphobia of like, yuck, a trans person. But then there's also this kind of like academic feminism, which says we're taking all of these feminist ideas, but we're just also adding in this premise that people can't change sex. And that, you know, if you start from that premise and run it through all of the radical feminist ideas, you end up with this huge, logically consistent worldview, which actually makes sense if you just start from this bad premise. But then the term TERF has kind of like taken on a life of its own, and now you see people online calling like Ben Shapiro or someone a TERF, and it's like, he's not a feminist, he's certainly not a radical feminist, he's not a trans exclusionary, he's just a shithead. So I think that sometimes it is useful to talk about TERFs when you're actually talking about people with a radical feminist view. And like I personally, when I'm encountering them, I almost prefer encountering TERFs to any other kind of anti-trans position, because I'm a feminist and they have, you know, lots of feminist positions, which I just totally agree with, and lots of conclusions that I agree with if I accept their premises. Whereas most people opposing trans rights that I encounter have none of that. And we can't like really have a conversation because they don't have all these feminist understandings and viewpoints and things. So that's why I usually use the term gender critical, which is what in the UK, what they've labeled their movement. And that gender critical includes TERFs, and it certainly started in TERFism, and lots of the language they use sounds feminist, but the ideas and structure and stuff has kind of taken on a life of its own, and now it includes conservatives, it includes religious extremists, it even includes like men's rights activists and stuff, all in this big bubble. And then I guess there's a larger bubble of transphobe, which like there are some transphobic people who have no fuss about the gender critical movement, they just think, yeah, trans people. So yeah, you're right. And certainly like, I think, you know, like you're saying about a cis gay man, could be a TERF. I mean, could have radical feminist views, but probably is less likely to, but possibly. I have met some, but also might well just be, like you say, trans exclusionary, might just be a transphobe, might be a gender critical. It can be like kind of messy to have a term. But I try and be specific when I'm personally talking about them, so that you can know what kind of arguments they're going to be using. So yeah, sorry, I did a big ramble there. I agree.
No, not at all. I should point out that Charlie did drop off of the call, but I feel like that's a really valuable and beautiful answer, because these words have a meaning. And, you know, we can be specific or non-specific, but, you know, TERF is a valuable word if we understand what it actually applies to.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And I think, yeah, it can be sort of, I don't know what the word is, not useful to call people TERFs who just, it doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Right. Would you consider JK a TERF specifically? Does she exhibit the same kind of like radical feminist views, or would it be a misnomer to apply that label to her?
I think she would definitely call herself a feminist, and I think that she probably has feminist views, and I think that if we had a conversation at the pub, we'd agree on a lot of things. Whether she's specifically a radical feminist, possibly, couldn't be certain without hearing other views. The problem with gender critical is it's so single issue that when you if you meet a TERF, like a real proper no true Scotsman TERF, they have all these other positions. They've got an opinion on sex work. They've got an opinion on surrogacy. They've got an opinion on, you know, all these other things. But gender critical people often only have one opinion, and it's about trans people.
Right.
So it depends. If J.K. Rowling has opinions on any other feminist position, then quite possibly yes.
That's a good way to determine that.
Well, I feel like, and I want to be careful in how I'm characterizing her arguments, but I feel like I have seen it presented that a lot of her transphobic beliefs, or a lot of the, you know, sort of soft or gentler things she's putting out there, have been tied to these ideas of concern for women. And I think that's part of what makes all of this so insidious, is because, you know, well, I love women. Everybody of course we love women. And so there's a little bit of that philosophy that goes into it, which is why I think the word TERF is kind of useful to identify the specific type of transphobia that is particularly insidious.
For sure. And I think this protect the women thing is very appealing to lots of groups. It's very appealing to traditional family values conservatives. It's very appealing to, I guess, traditional homophobes as well. And it can also be appealing even to men's rights activists who, you know, see the two groups a bit more separate, and, you know, women should be protected and men should do the, or whatever.
Men should be men and women should be women. Harumph.
Yeah. That's why you see all of these.
There's the Hagrid coming out there.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to use this opportunity of you making fun of me to turn back to the phones if we can.
Sounds good to me.